if you have someone that is armored and it takes a while to sort of take them down, and they have a lot of sort of charging aggression, and they're able to damage you a lot close range. This is sort of an enemy that's going to be sort of drawing to your position, and before you are able to take them down, they're going to be there, and you're going to take a lot of damage. So they're essentially this a spiky ball that's sort of pushing you and poking you in order to move around the space. So third, we have contextual enemy behaviors and or accuracy damage adjustment. So, excuse me. So essentially what this is that we might keep track of behind the scenes how long the player has been in a particular position, and then we adjust little sliders here and there, things like well, for one example, whether or not enemies are throwing grenades. So the enemy has the ability to throw a grenade, but we may wait until the player has spent a longer than a certain period behind cover, and then have enemies essentially unlock that ability so that enemies can now start throwing grenades to help move you. Another thing is flanking your position. So enemies may wait behind their cover positions for a small amount of time, but the longer you sort of wait, the more that they are going to then unlock the ability to have one of the attackers move up on you and flank you. And accuracy damage adjustment, this is also something we can do where if the player stays there for too long, the enemies their accuracy goes up, they can cause more damage. Essentially, this is kind of reflected kind of in what I guess human behavior would be, at least if you were expecting your enemy to sort of pop up in the same place over and over, your accuracy on them would be better, though maybe not the damage that you cause them. So let's see. Then next we look at so guaranteed enemy misses after a player position change. This is something we do on The Last of Us a lot of times. I don't know the exact I guess conditions that sort of cause this, but a lot of times, and it depends on the enemy, but pistol enemies, for instance, the first shot that they shoot at you tends to sort of miss automatically, and they can hit you starting with their second shot. Rifle enemies, I believe it depends on whether or not they're shooting from you from off screen or not. If they're on screen and they shoot at you, then their first shot will not miss. Anyway, sorry, that's sort of beside the point. Another way we can encourage a player to move around the battlefield is to use sort of the scarcity of resources. So looking at a game like The Last of Us, for instance, the ammo count, the amount of ammo that you find in the environment is actually pretty limited. And so if you decide to sort of hang out behind a cover position for an extended period of time and keep shooting, you're eventually going to run out of ammo. So essentially shooting is not really a great strategy for the long term to extend, because of that particular case. You need to move around the battlefield and maybe find ammo pickups, or you need to use some other means to your disposal, like doing stealth attacks to conserve your ammo. And same thing goes with health. So that's one thing that we were sort of at a disadvantage in Uncharted, because Uncharted has a recharging health system. So the longer you stay in cover, the more your health charges up and can go back to 100%. So in some ways, you're sort of encouraged to stay behind the same piece of cover for longer. And in The Last of Us, for instance, if you run out of health, then you really need to either use better tactics or you need to try to get around the environment and maybe find supplies in order to make a first aid kit, that sort of thing. So anyway, it's just kind of two different takes on kind of how we sort of manage health. In Uncharted, we don't have you sort of do health packs and stuff like that because it's afraid it would sort of like slow down the battlefield. We really want it to be sort of this flowy, frenetic sort of shooter that has the moments of sort of getting into cover, but it's not strictly a cover-based shooter, that sort of thing. And then another thing that you can do to move the player around is enemy imbalance. So enemies often have the advantage in numbers, so there's a lot more of them than there is of you, and because of that they can surround you and move up on your position. You can't focus on all of them at once. So that's one thing. Also, in The Last of Us, for instance, enemy accuracy is much higher than average for a human player. So they are sort of set up to cause a lot of damage and to be very effective at long range or at gun combat. And the player has, things like, weapon sway, stuff like that, that sort of make it harder for the player to be as effective as the enemies are. And of course, the enemies also have unlimited ammo generally, so that sort of forces a lot of pressure on the player, keeps them moving. And last is essentially the idea of advantageous stealth gameplay. So in The Last of Us, there are a lot of reasons why you want to be in stealth to take people down. For one thing, it is cheaper in ammo. It's also quieter, so you have less. You don't have people. As long as you're able to kill someone behind occlusion, you're not going to have everyone seeing you and then cluing in on you, and then you can move on to the next person. And then lastly is that it crap, I lost my last point. Okay, anyway, idea is that stealth gameplay is generally a dominant strategy for Last of Us, that you want to sort of move around and use the cover as occlusion instead of as cover from gunfire and stuff like that. So